In 1953, the United States government began secretly drugging its own citizens, not enemy soldiers, not foreign spies, its own people, American soldiers, American prisoners, American mental patients, American university students, ordinary Americans who trusted their government and had no idea what was being done to them. The program ran for 20 years. When it was finally exposed, the director of the CIA ordered every document destroyed. He nearly succeeded. And when what remained was uncovered by a Senate investigation, the government admitted everything. And then nothing happened. No trials, no convictions, no prison sentences. The men who ran the program retired with their pensions. The men who designed the experiments went back to their universities. The man who ordered the documents destroyed was never charged with a crime. This is the story of MK Ultra, and it is not a conspiracy theory. It is confirmed, documented, admitted United States government history. Let us go back to the beginning. World War II has just ended. The United States and the Soviet Union, allies against Nazi Germany, immediately begin competing for global dominance. This competition will define the next 5 decades. It will be called the Cold War. Both sides are terrified of the other. Both sides believe the other is developing weapons and techniques that do not yet exist in the public imagination. Mind control, psychological manipulation, methods to break human beings down to nothing and rebuild them as obedient instruments. This fear was not entirely irrational. After the war, American intelligence officers discovered that Nazi scientists had been conducting experiments on concentration camp prisoners. Experiments involving drugs, extreme temperatures, sensory deprivation, and psychological torture. These experiments were horrific. They were also, in the twisted logic of Cold War intelligence, potentially useful. Under a classified program called Operation Paperclip, the United States secretly recruited over 1,600 Nazi scientists and brought them to America. Their crimes were quietly buried. Their knowledge was put to work. At the same time, American intelligence officers watched in horror as captured American soldiers in Korea began appearing in propaganda films, confessing to war crimes, denouncing America, praising communism. These men had been brainwashed, or at least that was the fear. The CIA believed the Soviets had developed a technique for controlling human minds. They called it brainwashing, and they were terrified of falling behind. In 1950, the CIA launched a program called Project Artichoke. Its goal was to investigate whether it was possible to control a human mind against that person's will, to make someone do something they would never consciously choose to do. 3 years later, in April 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles approved a new and vastly expanded program. He called it MK Ultra. The name MK Ultra comes from the CIA's internal coding system. MK indicated it was a project run by the Technical Services Division. Ultra was simply a code word chosen for the project. It had 150 separate sub-projects. It involved at least 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. It had a budget of approximately $10 million in 1950s money, adjusted for inflation that is roughly $100 million today. And it operated in complete secrecy for 20 years. The man placed in charge of MK Ultra was Sidney Gottlieb. He was a chemist, a CIA officer, and by any reasonable definition, one of the most dangerous men in American history. Gottlieb believed that LSD, a powerful hallucinogenic drug discovered by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann in 1943, might be the key to mind control. If you could disorient a person completely, if you could destroy their sense of reality, if you could make them unable to distinguish truth from hallucination, you could, in theory, make them say or do anything. Gottlieb began testing this theory on human beings. The first and most fundamental rule of medical ethics is informed consent. Before any experiment is conducted on a human being, that person must be told what is happening to them and must agree to participate. This rule exists because of the Nazi experiments, because of the horrors uncovered at Nuremberg. The world looked at what Nazi doctors had done and said, never again. MK Ultra violated this principle from its very first experiment. Knowledge, without warning, without consent. The drug was slipped into drinks, injected without explanation, administered through food. And then the scientists watched what happened. Some subjects experienced euphoria, some experienced terror, some experienced complete psychological breakdown. The scientists watched, took notes, adjusted doses, and did it again. The experiments happened in universities. Professors recruited students who were told they were participating in drug research, but were not told which drugs or what doses. They happened in hospitals. Mental patients, who were already vulnerable were given LSD repeatedly without understanding why their symptoms were worsening. They happened in prisons. Inmates were offered reduced sentences in exchange for participation in experiments they did not fully understand, and they happened in what the CIA called safe houses, apartments in New York and San Francisco, rented specifically for MKUltra experiments. The CIA installed one-way mirrors, hidden cameras. They recruited women to lure men to these apartments, slip LSD into their drinks, and then CIA officers would watch the effects from behind the mirrors. This sub-project was called Operation Midnight Climax. It sounds like fiction. It is not. It is confirmed, documented, admitted. The most disturbing individual case from MKUltra involves a man named Frank Olson. Frank Olson was a U.S. Army biological weapons researcher. In November 1953, he attended a CIA retreat in Maryland. At the retreat, Sidney Gottlieb secretly spiked the after-dinner drinks with LSD. Olson had no idea what he had consumed. In the days that followed, Olson became increasingly disturbed. He told his CIA handlers he wanted to leave the program. He was taken to New York and placed under psychiatric observation. 10 days after being drugged without his knowledge, Frank Olson fell from the window of a 10th floor room at the Statler Hotel in New York City. The CIA told his family it was a suicide. They said nothing about the LSD. They said nothing about the experiment. His wife and children were not told the truth for 20 years. In 1975, when MKUltra was first becoming public, President Gerald Ford invited the Olson family to the White House and personally apologized. The family was paid $750,000 in compensation. In 1994, Frank Olson's son Eric had his father's body exhumed. A forensic examination found evidence inconsistent with a simple fall, injuries suggesting Olson may have been knocked unconscious before going through the window. Whether Frank Olson jumped or was pushed has never been definitively established. The CIA has never provided a complete account, and because Sidney Gottlieb destroyed most of the documents before anyone could stop him, it is likely the full truth will never be known. Frank Olson is one name, one case, one family. The true number of people affected by MKUltra experiments is unknown, because the documents were destroyed, because most victims never knew they were victims, because the program operated in secret for 20 years and the CIA made certain it would be difficult to prove. What we know from the documents that survived, about 20,000 pages recovered from a financial records warehouse that Gottlieb overlooked, is that MKUltra experimented not just with LSD, but with dozens of other substances: barbiturates, amphetamines, mescaline, heroin, electroconvulsive therapy, sensory deprivation, hypnosis, psychological torture, sleep deprivation. The goal in each case was the same: find a way to break a human mind down completely and control what replaces it. They never succeeded. No reliable method of mind control was ever developed. The experiments caused immeasurable harm to real human beings and produced nothing of scientific value. The Nixon administration and congressional investigations were expanding into intelligence agency abuses. CIA Director Richard Helms made a decision. He ordered Sidney Gottlieb to destroy every MKUltra file, every document, every record, every piece of paper that connected the CIA to 20 years of illegal human experimentation. Gottlieb complied. The files were shredded and burned. Helms believed he had buried MKUltra permanently. He was wrong. In 1975, the Church Committee, a Senate investigation into intelligence agency abuses, began uncovering evidence of MKUltra. In 1977, a CIA employee discovered approximately 20,000 documents that had been misfiled in a financial records building and had therefore escaped Gottlieb's destruction order. These documents were turned over to the Senate. In August 1977, a full Senate hearing was held. CIA Director Stansfield Turner testified. He confirmed MKUltra had existed. He confirmed it had conducted experiments on unwitting human subjects. He confirmed documents had been destroyed. And then the United States government did almost nothing. Sidney Gottlieb was allowed to retire quietly to a farm in Virginia. He kept his CIA pension. He was never charged with any crime related to MKUltra. He died in 1999 at the age of 80. Richard Helms was charged with a crime, but not for MKUltra. He was convicted of lying to Congress about CIA involvement in Chile. He was fined $2,000 and given a 2-year suspended sentence. He called it a badge of honor. The institutions, universities, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies that participated in MKUltra faced no legal consequences. Some paid civil settlements to victims who could prove their participation. Most did not. Most victims never knew they were victims. And that is perhaps the most disturbing element of this story. Not the experiments themselves, not the cover-up, not the absence of accountability, but the simple mathematical reality that the majority of people who were drugged, manipulated, psychologically broken, and used as instruments in a government program designed to control human minds never found out. They lived their lives not knowing. They attributed their psychological damage to other causes. They died without ever learning that their own government had done this to them. This is not history. This is not a Cold War story that ended in 1977. The legal framework that allowed MKUltra to happen, the absence of meaningful oversight of intelligence agencies, the culture of secrecy that placed national security above individual rights, the willingness to sacrifice ordinary citizens on the altar of cold war paranoia. These conditions did not disappear when MKUltra was exposed. They evolved. The next time a politician says trust us, the next time a government says this is classified for your own protection, the next time an authority figure says we would never do that to our own people. Remember MKUltra, they did, and nobody went to prison. Follow for more hidden history they never taught you in school.